One of the sad realities of modern retro collecting is the incredible demand put upon the hobby by ravenous fans looking for the best and most popular games. So insatiable has this pastime become, some people even resort to paying crazy money for items just because it's rare or unusual. Sometimes for software that aren't even games. In this episode, we will be looking at the rare and the expensive software for the Sega Saturn. I've broken this down into segments that will cover the stuff I think is worth considering, stuff that's not, and stuff better gotten in other territories. I hope you guys enjoy rare and expensive Sega Saturn games. The Japanese exclusive Final Fight Revenge comes in at number 8. This is a game whose quality simply does not match its asking price. It's a 3D fighter from Capcom, making it rather unique for the platform. Going for upwards of $300 complete, you can buy a library of much better fighting games for that money. Sometimes a game is released in small numbers in certain regions, and it becomes really difficult to find. That's what happened to Courier Crisis, a bicycle game not too dissimilar from Crazy Taxi. The PAL version is rather rare, which has pushed up its selling price north of $300 whenever it pops up. It isn't an outright terrible game, but it damn sure isn't worth that kind of fundage. Got it. Most of you know this one well. Released very late in the life of the Saturn in the US, it quickly became a sought-after game because of its limited numbers. It now sells between $200 and $300 complete, a ludicrous amount for a light gun game that can be defeated in 20 minutes. Once you add to the fact that the Japanese version can be gotten for as little as $20 complete, the US price is simply for those with money to burn. One of the great things about Working Designs is that they were willing to bring out games in the US other companies would have never touched. Even Sega themselves didn't want to release any of their own Sega Ages games, so when this compilation came out, it was much appreciated. That was until everyone and their grandmother wanted it, and the price shot upwards of $200 or more. These are all great games here, but you can buy the individual Japanese versions for less and still have money left over for a few great games. Thanks to the internet, games that got next to no exposure back then have become popular as all get out today. The extremely rare Psychic Killer Taramaru from Time Warner Interactive is one such game. Typically commanding $400 to $700 plus, this unique action game has become a much sought-after addition to many a Saturn library. Unfortunately, despite the game being fun and different from anything else on the platform, it is not worth anywhere near this kind of cash. This is shelf candy, pure and simple. Sometimes I can apply no rhyme or reason behind a game's asking price. That is certainly the case with the Saturn PAL exclusive Frankenstein Through the Eyes of the Monster. This is not a good game, yet it sells for nearly $200 complete when it shows up on eBay. I guess sometimes a rare game is just bid up by people looking for complete sets. I can think of no other reason why this game sells for this kind of money.
I just hope, Philip, that you turn out better than the last experiment. The flesh grew so uncontrollably thick and twisted, like pork butt.
The different versions of a game can sometimes drive up pricing because of their rarity. and that was the case with 1995's Virtua Fighter Remix. Sega gave this away for free in a sleeve, packed it in with new systems for a few months that year, and released a standalone long box version of it as well. This long box version is really rare, and goes well north of $200 complete. You are essentially paying all that extra money for a case and manual here. The standalone US sleeve version can go for as little as $10. The Japanese version is identical in content and goes for as little as $5. While we are on the subject of certain versions selling for a lot of money, there is no crazier example than Daytona USA Championship Circuit Edition Netlink Edition. This was never released at retail and could only be gotten from Sega online, making it one of the most rare US games. It does not show up often on auction sites, but when it does, it's almost always close to $1,000 complete. Aside from the Netlink functionality in the game itself, the physical package is pretty much identical to the original game, aside from a black and white leaflet about its extra functionality. Shining the Holy Ark was quite the unique 3D RPG adventure game. The story was cool and the characters were really well done. Patient eBayers can get this for around $100 complete, with disc-only auctions going for $50 sometimes. That's still a fair bit of money for a single game, but this Saturn exclusive is still well worth owning. It's true the Saturn version of Dracula X Nocturne in the Moonlight has some visual and performance issues, but it's also true that there is music, enemies, stages, items, and playable characters here that are not in any other version of the game. That makes this one special, and if you are a super fan looking for more of this great game, this is still very much worth a look. It's Japanese exclusive and tends to sell between $100 and $150 complete. My favorite game on the Saturn is Dragon Force. There is simply nothing else like this epic RPG strategy game. Rarely will I tell you that a game that approaches $200 complete is still worth considering, but this game absolutely is. Disc-only US auctions go for under $100, and the PAL version tends to be a few dollars cheaper. The case, manual, and disc are all beautiful, and the game itself is nearly infinitely replayable. It's an absolute must-own in my opinion. You guys know this one well. Treasure's classic Saturn beat-em-up is often on best of lists for the platform. It really is a great game, and the US version complete goes for around the $150 mark. I've seen disc-only games for as little as $60 if you don't mind adding a custom case to it. The PAL version is cheaper complete, and the Japanese version is cheaper still. Story is a big part of this experience, however, so make sure you can read it. I have watched the US version of Power Slave climb in price steadily for years now. Once it could be gotten for well under $100, and now you are lucky to get it for around the $150 area. It was more popular in Europe and tends to go for around $50 there under the name Exhumed, and the Japanese version is priced much the same. This is one of the better first-person shooters of the era, and was much deeper than the Doom and Quake clones you normally saw. The Saturn game is also different from any other version, adding to its appeal. Cotton 2 was a fantastic shoot-'em-up on the Saturn. Its unique blend of bold character graphics and hybrid gameplay really stood apart from other games in the genre. The Japanese exclusive Saturn game goes for a bit over $100 complete typically, and for a platform exclusive shoot-'em-up, that's actually quite cheap. Games like Hyperduel go for much more. Cotton Boomerang is often considered better and more expensive, but this game stands the test of time on its own merits. This promotional title was given away at a TV show in Japan called Tokyo Friend Park, and was based on one of the events that had contestants trying to deliver soba noodles within a certain time frame. The graphics engine is rather impressive, though the gameplay is fairly basic in its execution. The lack of a full-scale retail version has made this game really rare, and when it does show up, it's often thousands of dollars. Japanese companies use the Saturn for a great many things. EYEFUL Home is a piece of software used to tour homes that are for sale. People call this a demo, but it isn't. It's a full-blown advertisement. It was given away to customers at the time and was not a retail product. Less than 100 copies are said to exist today, and it again sells for well over $1,000 complete. Also in the advertising category is HEIM WALTZ, which is basically doing the same things as EYEFUL Home. You tour houses here and get a feel for the layout and customization options available. Again, this is not a retail product, and not many are known to exist. Expect another $1,000 plus to add it to your collection. You guys are all likely familiar with the multiplayer juggernaut Saturn Bomberman. The US version has risen to hundreds of dollars complete, and even the PAL edition is a bit too expensive. Luckily, the Japanese version tends to go for around the $30 mark, making it the version of choice for penny-pinching Saturn fans. The US version of Mega Man 8 has somehow grown to selling for hundreds of dollars as well. And again, the Japanese game, Rockman 8, is far cheaper. Typically selling around the $50 mark, it's a much more reasonable proposition for this great action platformer. Ditto for Mega Man X4. US version goes for around the $200 mark. and the Japanese Rockman X4 around the $50 range. If you want to understand the story, read a FAQ for 5 minutes and save yourself a ton of money. Street Fighter Collection is one of the Saturn's greatest compilations. It includes Super and Super Turbo versions of Street Fighter II, as well as Street Fighter Alpha 2 Gold. That's a lot of fighting game goodness there, and the prices have risen to well over $150 for a complete US version. The PAL edition can go even higher. Luckily for those of us not averse to Japanese games, you can get this for a mere $40 complete. Marvel's Superheroes is another Capcom fighting game that gets above the $100 mark. Both the PAL and Japanese version of this go for much cheaper, often below $50. Outside of the win quotes and the blather at the end, the text of this doesn't matter at all. Save the funds and get a cheaper version. Whenever we talk about game pricing, it all boils down to opinion and desire. Some games are special to some people. They'll pay more. Some games are needed to complete a full library. Those folks will pay more. Some games are just so sought after and prized, the entire community pines to own their very own copy. Prices go up, and all of a sudden things start getting crazy. My advice to everyone out there is to consider games from different regions in every circumstance. You will often have variants that will save you time, energy, and money, and are often the same experience just in a different case. When working with eBay, beware of the buy it now listings. These are almost always higher for the more expensive games, basically there to take advantage of those looking for immediate gratification in their game hunt. Game auctions can be just as ridiculous thanks to last-minute bidding wars, but can also yield the lowest prices to those patient enough to put in the time and effort to see them through. There are some of you out there that just refuse to pay anything for classic games like this, but there are also those of us that love having original games with our hardware. In many instances, we do not have to be a slave to gray market pricing, and do have options to pursue to save some money. Of course, there are many more games on the Saturn that cost a fortune, more than I ever could have covered in a single episode. If you guys enjoyed this, let me know in the comments, and I'll see about doing a part 2. I'm Sega Lord X. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.